This is VikesNow. I am Dustin Baker. We are here on Saturday, May 21st to talk about players slated for free agency next spring. So, guys to monitor during this 2022 upcoming season. Kevin O'Connell's first year at the helm. I guess I would phrase it as may not play here next year, but then that sounds a little doomsday-esque. It's dudes with expiring contracts that 2022 is scheduled to be their final season with the Vikings. The good news is this year, heading into 2023 offseason, feels different than the past couple of years. You'll recall the mass exodus of 2020 when all of Mike Zimmer's defensive nucleus went elsewhere. Linval Joseph, Xavier Rhodes, Trey Waynes, Mackenzie Alexander, Everson Griffin, Anthony Harris eventually. Sendejo, I think he left too. It was like all of the Vikings' aging veterans. They weren't crazy old. They just weren't going to renew their contracts. They jettisoned. And from that moment on, right around the time the Diggs trade happened, Zimmer's defense flat out wasn't good. It wasn't even average. And the Vikings weren't a contender anymore. They devolved into mediocrity. And that's why we have a new head coach, because the defense first coach could no longer coach defense. And voila, it's a brand new era with a new general manager and a new head coach. So, and the same thing to a degree happened this year. There was a lot of players that were signed to one-year contracts. Sheldon Richardson, still a free agent. Xavier Woods, the safety. And a lot of these one-hit wonders didn't stick around. Patrick Peterson was a holdover, but we will talk about him shortly. So I want to lift up right now the guys that are playing in the contract years, the ones that have incentive to ball out, because they'll get paid in March of 2023 if they indeed performed in a way that says, this guy deserves more money. So there are 6 of them that are big names, and then I'll rattle off the ones that are like. But on the whole, this next offseason doesn't feel like the past two, where it's going to be a lot of talent shoving out the door because of the way Rick Spielman structured it back then. And this doesn't include, if things don't go great, I know we'll talk about which teams could Cousins be traded to that he would approve with a no-trade clause. I know with Danielle Hunter, his contract stuff will probably come out. So there's always stuff that could prevent these guys from playing on the team next year, even if they are under contract. But I'm not going to spitball those. This is not the forum for it. We'll get to that if it happens. But these are the guys per the ink on the deals that aren't going to be a part of the 2023 Vikings as it stands right now. And so the first big one, and this will dominate the offseason potentially next January, February, March, is Irv Smith Jr. You blinked. I blinked. Bada bing, Irv Smith's in a contract year. The end of his rookie deal is upon us in less than 4 months when September starts and the regular season kicks off. Somehow, Irv Smith Jr. is in his 4th year. We've been forecasting a breakout season for 4 years, and we've yet to see it. The guy simply doesn't get targets. When he was a freshman and a sophomore with the Vikings, Kyle Rudolph was there, and because of his reputation and his sure-handedness, he commanded the TE1 targets. Then it was time for Rudolph to pack up and go elsewhere. He went to the Giants for 1 year. Now he's a free agent. And Smith Jr. was supposed to ascend to TE1 in 2021. Nope, torn meniscus, Tyler Conklin show. So Irv Smith Jr. has never taken a regular season snap without Kyle Rudolph in the shadows or even in the forefront. So I think that's why it felt like he's never had a huge impact. He's only got the max targets he ever got was 40-something. That was his rookie season. And you look at a guy like Mark Andrews for the Ravens, had 153 last year. And our big tight end, the most he's ever had was 40-something. There is a lot of leeway for Smith to get more targets than he ever did in the Zimmer system. A, because Rudolph doesn't play here anymore. B, he should be healthy. And an offense-first mind should want to exploit the Irv Smith's wide receiver-like tendencies trapped inside of a tight end's body. He's basically a muscular wide receiver. I think I've probably written that on VikingsTerritory.com 40 times since I started on that site. So Irv Smith Jr., if the bust-out year that you've been dreaming about comes to fruition, somebody's going to have to pay him. It probably won't be George Kittle money, which is $15 million a year, unless he's just Smith Jr. is absolutely phenomenal in 2022. But Kwesi Adofo-Mensah will have to make a decision on, do I invest money in this tight end, or do I let him walk? The Vikings' recent history of first round opting in for more from rookies is shoddy as of late. But yeah, Irv Smith is the one that will dominate the conversations if he plays well in terms of contract extensions. He's like the one big one because he has the upside, the potential, the pizzazz to be a humongous weapon if they give him the targets, because to date they have not, and he was hurt. So remember that one. Circle it somewhere. Irv Smith, you're going to have those chats, especially if he's good in 2022. The next one is unsung, sort of, is Dalvin Tomlinson. He signed last year during 2021 free agency, and he was one of the few guys that came on for more than 1 year. So, without any drama, he's here for a second year, a carryover to the O'Connell and now Ed Donatel system. I don't know. He could be a 2-year patch over guy, and then they'll hand it over to Armin Watts, and he's going to be on this list too here in a minute, or draft somebody next year in terms of interior defensive lineman. It looks like he's going to play nose tackle this year, which, based on the way he's built and his body looks, he's sure built like a nose tackle. Zimmer liked him at the 3-tech in the 4-3 defense. But Dalvin Tomlinson is another big one, especially if he contributes in a mighty way. This is slated to be his final year. So you got Irv Smith Jr., Dalvin Tomlinson, who played pretty well last year. The next one is, no surprise, Patrick Peterson, who's doing back-to-back 1-year deals with the Vikings because, for some reason, better or worse, he likes the Vikings. He likes the roster. When he re-signed this time, he called it stacked. And the guy's been around football for over a decade. For him to call the Vikings stacked gives me hope and promise that he must know what he's talking about, because otherwise the Vikings would have been a pit stop, just like they were for Xavier Woods. A one-hit wonder, you head elsewhere, he goes and chases title with the Chiefs or the Cowboys, which are the two teams I think he dropped on his podcast for a wish list when it was unclear if he was coming back to the Vikings in 2022. But Patrick Peterson's a big one, that leadership stability that he offers. He's going to get to groom a new guy in Andrew Booth, maybe even Lewis Cena, who plays safety a little bit. But right now, he is the single most reason why you shouldn't panic about the Vikings' cornerback room. He's there. He's still good. I can't believe we debated whether or not he was good in 2021. He was very good. He just wasn't the all-pro guy that you're used to from 2015 with the Cardinals. He only had multiple all-pros in a row. But yeah, he is getting up there in age, so he'll have to determine in March of 2023 if he wants to come back again. Hopefully they're just coming off a fresh deep playoff run, and it'll be a no-brainer that he wants to come back and join the Vikings for a third consecutive year. Irv Smith, Dalvin Tomlinson, Patrick Peterson. Next one I think is an absolute foregone conclusion that he gone is Alexander Madison. I tweeted yesterday the little factoid that was mind-boggling to me, and that's why I tweeted it, because I figured it'd be mind-boggling to you guys, is that Alexander Madison is younger than Ty Chandler. Yeah, Alexander Madison was a young rookie when he was plucked out of the 2019 NFL Draft in the 3rd round by Mr. Spielman. And Ty Chandler is an old rookie by comparison who was picked by Adofo-Mensah this time in the 5th round. So somehow, someway, Ty Chandler, who's supposed to perhaps take over some of the carries, the reins for Dalvin Cook or Alexander Madison, or be the plan after those guys, he's older than Alexander Madison. Ty Chandler is. It's wild. But Alexander Madison is just in that Irv Smith draft class. The 2019, they weren't first rounders. They don't get a 5th year. This will be Madison's final year. I don't see the Vikings divorcing Dalvin Cook, especially if he explodes in Kevin O'Connell's offense. He's one of those dynamic running backs that are in the top 5. This is Cook I'm talking about, that you pay. I know a lot of you don't want to pay running backs, and to an extent I agree, but I do think there is a carve-out exception for the best running backs in the league. Somebody's got to pay them. They're worth it. They're dynamic. They catch passes, and they are more than a run-of-the-mill, let's draft him as a rookie, run the tread off the tires, go draft the new one. There's about 5 guys, running backs, at any given time in the NFL that are worth larger contracts than the theory of running backs being expendable. And I believe Dalvin Cook is one of them. And bada bing, he's going to get some wide receiver looks inside Kevin O'Connell's offense if minicamp is any indication, or that could just be a fat-ass decoy. we shall see. But Alexander Madison is one of those guys that could probably get a lot of snaps, maybe like in the 49ers system, who do that hodgepodge of 2 or 3 dudes at all times, and then one of them gets hurt and the other guy becomes a bell cow for 3 weeks. That's where Madison's life after Vikings is slated. Or like the Texans. I looked at their running backs. Go look at the Texans depth chart. A, it sucks, and then B, their weapons are laughable, especially when you're trying to force Davis Mills into starting quarterback status. Their running backs are putrid. So a guy like Madison would reasonably be an upgrade for the Houston Texans in 2023 when they're looking around trying to do what is they do in the offseason to formulate an offense. So Madison, I think, is good as gone. This one you will lose no sleep over. It's Garrett Bradbury. He's supposed to start at center. They keep saying those things. I'll believe it when I see it because it would be too strange for 3 offensive coordinators under Mike Zimmer. They all couldn't figure Bradbury out. None of them are bright enough to figure out that this guy needs help with pass protection. I find it personally hard to believe that the West guy, the offensive coordinator, O'Connell's the guy that O'Connell brought along. I can't think of his last name right now, and that's shame on me. But I find it hard to believe that O'Connell and his new pals can just make Bradbury good via pass protection. Bradbury's fine in run blocking. He's actually pretty damn good at that. But they're banking on their system being advantageous for Bradbury and him not being putrid via pass protection. But regardless, he is in the final year of his contract, and the Vikings even said no thanks to the 5th-year option. So this will be it for Bradbury. It would be really cool if he lived up to his first-round draft stock, but I don't see it coming. But I will get super happy about it if it happens. So Irv Smith Jr., Dalvin Tomlinson, Patrick Peterson, Alexander Madison, Garrett Bradbury. The one more, because of course there's incidentals, I guess I'd call them, after these big 6 or whatever that are like, nobody cares that they're free agents. But the other one is Armin Watts. The reason I bring him up is because when the bright lights came on and he was anointed a starter in 2021, he was pretty good. Michael Pierce missed a lot of time. They said, hey, homie, can you play in the middle of the defensive line? He was like, sure. And he played pretty well. And he's organic, homegrown, late-round draft pick by Spielman. But his contract is up after this year, and this year for him is uber important because we got to figure out, all right, was his success a drop in a hat, and then other teams will figure him out before too long. But Armin Watts, this will be the final year of his contract. I should have said at the top of the Watts piece here that the reason this one is interesting is you have the potential that Dalvin Tomlinson and Armin Watts would skedaddle via free agency in like the same week, which would leave the innards of the defensive trenches very thin. Now, I know Watts isn't coveted. Like, it's only Vikings fans probably know who he is because he was unexpectedly pretty good last year. But in terms of nuts and bolts of a depth chart, Tomlinson and Watts being free agents in the same season means that you could, in theory, have a brand new defensive line, or at least the inside of it in 2023. So the guts of the Vikings defensive line is auditioning for 2023. And that'll be interesting to see how it plays out, how Ed Donatel uses those guys. And then the other ones that I consider incidentals that are somewhat noteworthy, they play, but nobody at all is going to care if they don't return in 2023, are Jesse Davis, the signee from the Miami Dolphins, Chris Boyd, like the habitual CB5 for the Vikings. BC Johnson, we talked about him earlier this week. He made a surprise showing at minicamp. He's still on the team too. He will be a free agent. Greg Joseph, that one is only notable because now they have a kicker from Oklahoma in for competition. So if Joseph's the real deal, they'll have to re-sign him, or they could pivot to this cool young guy this sooner. The other one is Chandan Sullivan, a signee, a defection from the Green Bay Packers who came along with Zadarius Smith. He's only here for 1 year. We'll see what his role is. It looks like he should be the slot guy, but who knows how much playing time he'll ultimately get. They're all theories right now. Just a show of theories, it feels like sometimes. Oh, let's see. And then Oli Udoh. It looks like he'll be the backup tackle in the vein of Rashad Hill. He's a free agent. And then the gunner, the special teams guy, Dan Chisena. I never know if I'm saying that name right. The speedster, the tall speedster. That's one thing about Dan Chisena that's really cool is he's fast as hell. And when you think of a fast dude of his stature, you're like, oh, okay, he must be a little whippersnapper, 5'8", cruise around. Nope, he's like 6'3", 6'4", and still fast. So those are all the guys that you know but don't really care about if they become free agents. And then there's all kinds of dudes like Austin Schlottman and, where it's truly roster turnover at the very, very bottom that maybe won't even make the team this year. That can be 2023 free agents. So, yeah, Irv Smith Jr., Dalvin Tomlinson, Patrick Peterson, Alexander Madison, Garrett Bradbury, Armin Watts, and then the incidentals like Jesse Davis, BC Johnson, etc. Those are the guys to watch in 2022 to determine if they'll be back in 2023. I will be back in a day or two for more VikesNow. As always, I appreciate you watching, and Skol, baby.